thrill seekers. That was about 12 seconds of the intro to Don't Think Twice, It's Alright by Bob Dylan, and I will put the rest of the song at the end of the video, or the rest, I just did one verse of it. I'll put it at the end of the video in case you're interested in watching it, but you don't have to, and I'm making a point of that because that's kind of the point of today's video. So I went through this sort of stream of thoughts and things that were sparked by a nasty comment I got on my video channel. And that's not to encourage you to leave nasty comments, because sometimes I do comment on these videos about nasty comments I've gotten. But sometimes they're more interesting than the complimentary things you say, which are very nice. Not also very nice. Those are very nice. The nasty comments are not very nice. So okay, let me try to set up the scene for you, and then I'll get into it, because I think this might be interesting to some of you who are interested in studying Buddhism. It's about the teacher versus the person, or the man in the case, since I'm a man. So I think man sounds better than person in this case, because it makes it feel more you know what I mean? It feels more If I was a woman, saying woman would make it feel more than saying person. Person feels a little bit removed. So man makes it sound more direct. So it's about the teacher versus the man in Buddhism. So the nasty comment I got was on the video I put up while I was in England of me singing They Were All on Drugs, which is a Julian Cope song. And it seemed kind of cool to be able to do it singing in a stone circle, to sing in an actual British stone circle, which I assumed was an ancient stone circle, but then the friend of mine who showed me, Dave Ford, who showed me the stone circle, said no, it was built by his buddy 7 years ago. But it looks really ancient. And of course there are real ancient stone circles all over England. But I got a comment on there from somebody saying basically this bad singing and bad song brings your whole YouTube channel down. Stick to Zen. And this set off a whole train of thought in my mind. As some of you have no doubt realized, I've been putting music videos on this channel along with the Zen videos. And I've been keeping the music videos separate. When I first started doing this, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I would put music at the beginning of each of my videos, or almost most of my videos, and some of it stretched to like a minute or a minute and a half long. And after a while, I thought, oh, that's too much to inflict upon people who are just clicking to see a talk about Zen. So I started cutting it down to the point where I always try to make it less than 20 seconds of music at the beginning of the video, and then if there's more, I'll either put it at the end of the video, which I'm going to do on this one, or I'll put it as a separate video. So you don't have to look at the music videos. And internally, I want to explain how this feels to me, though, because I don't think it feels this way to the people who are viewing it, which is fine. But what it feels like to me is playing music is a skill that I have worked on, and I spend a lot of time on the music videos, or even the musical portions of the other videos. Much more time goes into preparing them than goes into the Zen videos most of the time. Some of the Zen videos I do work on and do a lot of research and stuff, but generally, like even the one that I showed you just now, the one you saw at the beginning, I've been working on that Travis picking for 3 or 4 months to try to get to the skill level, which isn't that great, that I've gotten, but at least I can kind of get through a song. So it's a lot of work, and it's a skill, and it's something I've been working on since, I first started playing guitar when I was 12, and then I started taking lessons when I was 14. So for the first 2 years, I was just going, wah, 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 just banging on the thing. I had no idea what a chord was or anything. But so playing in bands since I was 15. So, music has been a big deal in my life, but it's not been where my sort of success has happened. And when I see mean comments about my music on the channel here, it obviously matters enough to me to make this video about it, but you're going to see that it probably goes in a direction that you maybe not expecting. I hope you're not expecting. But it's not going to deter me. I'm not going to stop making music videos because some dumbass on the internet says my singing is bad. I'll just keep making them. They're free. This is my attitude. I offer it for free. You don't have to pay for them. You don't have to watch them. And like I said, the Zen videos are a separate deal. So like I can tell by the view counts that the music videos get between 500 and 1,000. At the best ones get about 1,000. And then the Zen videos get 1,000 at least for pretty much everyone, up to 10,000 or I think there was one that was up to 80,000 at one point. But anyway, they get a lot more views. That's the point. And to me, it feels a little bit lopsided because I put all this work into the music, but I don't put that much work into I'm exaggerating a little bit. I do put work into the Zen videos, but it feels more like real work when I'm working on the music videos, because I have to get my fingers to do things that my fingers don't want to do. Most of the ones I put up here are like a challenge. I'm trying to do something that's a bit beyond my skill level. And so I started wondering, what is the real value of yakking about Zen? And this got me into a conversation via email with my friend Shozan Jack Haubner, who does a YouTube channel called Zen Confidential that everybody should watch. To stop this video right now, go look up Zen Confidential, Shozan Jack Haubner, and watch his videos. They are great. He was a monk at Mount Baldy Zen Center for 13 years, went through a lot of weird stuff and scandals, and has a lot of stories to tell about the real life of like a full-time Zen monk. My teacher considered me to be a monk, but I never lived at a monastery, which is what Shozan did for 13 years. So I think his experience is really relevant and really interesting. But what Shozan told me in his email response to what I said about, is there any value to what I do? Because sometimes I feel like maybe people like Richard Dawkins are right. Richard Dawkins said at one point, and I wish I'd looked up the quote, but I forgot to do it. But anyway, I'll paraphrase. It was something like, theologians are just worthless people. They aren't real scientists, even though they sound, the name theologian makes it sound like it's something real. And it's just hot air that just is pure nonsense. Anyway, something like that. And I started thinking, well, what am I really doing? I feel like the only thing of value that I have out of this whole spiritual teacher thing is the practice of Zazen. And the only value I'm giving anybody is encouraging them to practice Zazen. And when I go on a retreat, I do this thing called Dokusan, where I talk to people about their experiences in Zazen, and I can help people through the kind of weird experiences that they sometimes have, which mainly amounts to me saying, yeah, that's normal. Everybody goes through some weird experiences during Zazen. The unique flavor of the weird experiences that you go through is different from the weird flavor of the unique experience. What did I say? Anyway, it's everybody has a different sort of flavor of weird experience during Zazen after they've been doing it for 5 or 10 or 20 years. But I can help people deal with those things, and I can kind of help with that. But I don't know if just yakking about reincarnation and yakking about karma and yakking about the life of the Buddha and yakking about the life of Dogen and all this stuff and this philosophical stuff, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder what real value it has. But what Shozan brought up in his email to me was like the difference between the teacher and the man. And there's always a kind of a difference. So like Brad Warner, the man, would probably rather be a professional guitarist and singer-songwriter musician than a professional Zen dude. It's what I worked on when I was younger, and what I kind of failed at, even though I got those 4 albums out of Midnight Records in the 80s, but they didn't really catch any sort of attention, and I was never able to make a living out of it. So then there's me, now doing all this Zen talk, and I am in the role, not here. Here I'm being in the role of an entertainer, but when I'm in England or in Germany and Finland, like I was last month, I'm in the role of a Zen teacher, and it's not the most comfortable role. I'm not that comfortable doing it. I can do it, and I can manage once I kind of get started and get rolling in it, but it's always like I noticed this thing when I was doing Dokusan during these retreats that I just did in Europe. The first Dokusan was always really rough for me. I don't know if it was rough for the person I was speaking to, but it was like hard for me to get into the mode of being Dokusan guy, because I don't think of myself that way. It's not my own self-image. I think of like, why are you asking this guitar player to tell you about the secrets of the universe? Because like, what do I know about it? But I can fall into that role. And I've been realizing that there is this kind of dichotomy, and the general way that people handle it is okay. The reason I wore this Kiss shirt is kind of related to it. Okay. So when Kiss were in their heyday in the 70s, their whole act was based upon a kind of a fake persona. So they put on all this makeup and this weird costuming, and they breathed fire, and when they were on stage, they were always in character. That was one of the kind of neat things about Kiss. Was not only were they in costumes and doing this stuff, they actually played their music in a character. So Ace was always the spaceman character when he played, and Gene Simmons was always the demon character. Paul Stanley was the lover character, or whatever, the star child, and then Peter Criss was back there behind the drums being the Catman on drums. So they were in character the whole time. And this is kind of the way that Zen teaching, and probably most sort of religious teaching, is usually handled. There's a costume to it. There's a robe that you wear, and you put on this robe in the Okesa, and there's this whole thing about putting on the robe, which I haven't talked about much in this channel. You don't just put that robe on. You do a chant. You put it on your head. You stick it on your head, and then you do this chant. Dai zai geru fuku mu so fuku den e hibu nyorai kyo kodo shoshujo. You do that 3 times before you put that on, and the standard English translation is Great Robe of Liberation, field far beyond form and emptiness, wearing the Tathagata's teaching. Tathagata is Buddha. I free all beings. And it's like, oh, but you put it on, and you do that to kind of make yourself aware of the seriousness of what this costume is and what this costume means. I bet you Kiss had in fact I know, because I've seen some documentaries about it, that they had a similar backstage ritual. Before they went on stage, they got into character, and then they maintained that character while they were on stage, and then when they went off stage, they didn't have to be that character anymore. Although I guess sometimes Gene Simmons likes to brag that with the groupies he would remain in character. I don't know about that. But anyway, you only have to maintain that character for the span of time that you are on stage. And it's the same with spiritual teachers. They maintain this character during the span of time that they're on stage, and then they can drop it afterwards. This is where the problems often come in. So when I first started being a Zen teacher, because my teacher forced me into it, but that's a whole other story, I tried to do that. I tried to teach Zen always in character. And it just wasn't working for me. It didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like this is what's necessary. So I started doing it a different way, which is the way I do it to this day, is I don't do it in character. I just just teach Zen as Brad, and I kind of have merged the characters together. The Brad character and the Zen teacher character are kind of like inseparable at this point. So I teach Zen as myself, and that means I will not pretend to be the super enlightened being. This is not to say that everybody who teaches Zen, whenever they're in character, are pretending to be the super enlightened being, but there's a certain kind of, nobody ever discusses this or teaches you how to do it, or at least I don't know of anybody. My teacher certainly didn't teach me to do it, but I could see the way other people handled it is they would put on this persona, and there's certain sorts of things that this persona will do and say that might be different from what they would do and say in another context. But I just started going, I'm just going to do and say whatever I do and say in other contexts and talk about Zen that way and see how that works. And it's had, various degrees of success. But thinking about this got me thinking, well, how is it done in the ancient past? Like, one of the things that makes people like Buddha seem so special is because their story is so far in the distant past and so sketchy that we really don't know anything much about Buddha or any of this sort of ancient classical teachers you could mention. We don't know much about them other than what they did when they were in character, when they were putting on this persona, when they were, as it were, being Gene Simmons the demon. When 2,000 years from now, probably all anybody will know about Gene Simmons was his demon character. They won't know that he had a life, beyond that, or that he was, anything other than that character all the time. Ziggy, what you barking at? So what's left is the character. Now, what's interesting with Dogen is that he's one of the few teachers of ancient times, because he's kind of almost, it's 800 years ago, and I don't know where the ancient and modern gets, where the cutoff is, but he's a little bit closer to our time. He's not quite 1,000 years ago, and he is beginning to do kind of what I do, which is he tells you a little bit about himself. Now, compared to a modern day celebrity, a contemporary celebrity, we'd have to say we don't know much about Dogen. But compared to other teachers of his era, we do know a lot about Dogen, because he tells us. Most of the stuff is in Bendowa, which is what did we call it? I forget what Nishijima and Cross called it, but it's something like a talk on pursuing the way. That's usually how it's given. The first section of that is an autobiography where he kind of tells you his life story in miniature. He doesn't tell you a lot of details. And then throughout Shobo Genzo, he's mostly remaining in character as the teacher guy, but occasionally he'll drop a hint. Like one of my favorites, and I wish I could tell you where this occurs, but in one of his essays, he says something like, I've often feared that I would lose the insight that I had by not guarding it carefully enough. So he tells us little things about himself and how he feels about this stuff, and steps outside, very rarely, but he does do it, steps outside the character of the teacher. Now, another thing this got me thinking about is a guy in England, my friend Matt Ryan, gave me a book called, I think it's called Star of the East, and it's a biography of Jiddu Krishnamurti. And one of the things about Jiddu Krishnamurti is he was found by guys in the Theosophical Society, and he was groomed to be the world teacher. And then he rejected that role, and it's very complicated, and you can go look it up. But the thing is, the way they conceived of it was this world teacher that they had envisioned was sort of an ethereal presence out there in the universe somewhere who was going to take over Jiddu Krishnamurti's body and use it as a vehicle for expressing himself or itself or whatever it is. And they thought the Buddha was one of these, and they thought that Jesus was one of these, and everybody, all the great teachers they thought were one of these. And it's where that term avatar comes up. You know, it's not just the movie Avatar, and it's not just something people do in video games. It comes from a Hindu religious concept of this vehicle for the teacher. The avatar is the incarnation of the teacher, but the body of the teacher is often, not throughout Hinduism, but often in certain forms of Hinduism, considered to be kind of just a shell that the teacher occupies. So it's kind of like that when people put on the role of the teacher. They come out and they do this thing in this costume with this pageantry and this kind of, you know, almost theatrical setup that you do, and then you come out and you play that role, and then then you take it off. The problems come if the man and the teacher are extremely different, you know, which is what Shozan and I kind of got to talking about with, he did a recent video about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, author of Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism and other books, where he would be this great teacher when he was writing his books, and most of the time when he was giving his lectures, if he wasn't too drunk. And then off stage, he was a drunken sex maniac, you know, and so there was this real weird thing where he could put on this role of a teacher and be very effective and say wonderful, amazing things, and then go off and be a total jerk. I don't know. I see, this is why I shouldn't do videos like this, because I don't have a conclusion. But I feel like, you know, you can get kind of close to where the man and the teacher are in line with each other, but I don't think you can ever get to the point where they're exactly the same thing, you know. So I always feel that when I'm giving a lecture and when I'm doing Dokusan, that, you know, I don't want to sound creepy and spooky, but it's almost like I'm allowing something else that's not that much connected with my personality as Brad to come through, and I feel like it comes as much from the people I'm interacting with as it does from me. It arises in the space between us, and maybe it's somehow slightly closer to me than it is to the rest of the people in the audience. I don't know, but it's not. It's like how you know, they say the moon doesn't orbit the Earth and the Earth doesn't orbit the sun. We're taught that, but the sun and the Earth orbit a common center of gravity, and the moon and the Earth orbit a common center of gravity, and that center of gravity happens to be very close to the center of the sun and the center of the Earth, but it isn't exactly the same thing. So I feel like it's sort of like that. Okay, yeah, I've just gone on and said 20 minutes of confusing stuff. How about I stop here and do the usual beg for donations? If you want to donate to me saying more confusing stuff, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you'll find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts, and those are my main ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support, but you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. And those same links are available below. If you're watching on YouTube, they're in the description section, so you can go to them if you don't want to go to that URL. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. I'm going to do a little Ziggy cameo, and then at the end will be the rest of the song you heard at the beginning of the video if you want to watch it, but you don't have to watch it, especially you knucklehead who left that stupid comment on my other video. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? You like being out here in the sun and the Tweety birds that are up there in that tree? That tree's got a lot of flowers right now. I don't know if I can get a shot of it. It's full of hummingbirds and things. It's pretty cool. Where's Ziggy? Oh, there he is. Alright, Ziggy, let's go back inside and edit the video, okay? Well, it ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe. If you don't know by now, then it ain't no use to sit and wonder why. the break of dawn. Look out your window and I'll be gone. You're the reason I'm traveling on. But don't think twice, it's all